welcome to another edition of Hypnosis Helps with me, Neil Myers, Hypnosis Practitioner, here in what's now sunny New London. A beautiful day today. We had torrential rain yesterday. We all got very wet, but now it's a lovely day. And as usual, it's a lovely day to talk about hypnosis. Every day's a good day to talk about hypnosis, right? So today we're going to be joined by somebody on the program, Holly, who I think is there right now. And we're going to be talking about a few interesting topics today, long work and short work. Let me just see if Holly's right there, which I believe she is. Hey, Holly.
No, you didn't answer.
Hello.
I was still up.
She's there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, good. As they say in the old seances, one knock for yes, two knocks for no. I always wondered what would happen if you got two knocks. Is anybody there? Two knocks? No. So Holly's joining us on the phone because I asked Holly to join us specifically because she had a very interesting and I might say spectacularly successful result with an aspect of hypnosis. Today's topic is going to be largely covered, we're largely covering short and long programs. In other words, when you go to a hypnosis practitioner or you're contemplating going to a hypnosis practitioner, why it is that some problems, some things that you want to change, lend themselves to work which we can do in a relatively short time, others over a longer period of time. But sometimes what you'll find when you go to a hypnosis practitioner, or if you're looking, they confuse the two. Sometimes they try and do things which really are going to take a long period of time for reasons that we'll discuss, and they'll try and do it in a short period of time for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's costs, sometimes it's they don't really understand the nature of the problem or what it takes to work with it. Other times it's the exact opposite. Sometimes there's something that can be fixed very fast using hypnosis, and yet some people seem to be engaged in long, endless programs which never really arrive at resolution, and we're going to talk about that. So this is, again, like every program, it's for you. But the first thing I want to do is talk to Holly. And Holly, specifically, we're going to talk today, I'm going to ask you questions about migraine. Now, we're going to cover, we've talked about migraines, headaches and things like that. And before we talk about that, I should just make it clear, Holly, as far as you're aware, when you don't have any head trauma, nothing like a brain tumour or anything like that, correct?
Correct.
Right. And so one of the things that we always do when we work with people with anything around the head is we always ensure that they've had a proper workup from doctors. People can come, a lot of people suffer from headaches, a lot of people suffer from migraine headaches, and mostly those migraine headaches don't indicate any other physiological problem that we have to concern ourselves with, fortunately. However, as a precaution, we always ask them if they've had some sort of a workup, because if they've got a very serious problem, heaven forbid, things like a brain tumour or some other serious physical problem. I mean, for example, if they have something like spinal meningitis and they're suffering from severe headaches, they would come on acutely and quite quickly, so we probably know and there'd be other signs. But we don't want to start doing hypnosis on that, we want to get them to a doctor. But here we're not talking about anything like that. We're talking about migraine headaches that maybe you watching out there have suffer from now, or suffered from in the past, or if you have a friend or family member who does. And I want to illustrate this as an example of how Holly, using her knowledge and skill in self-hypnosis and the methods that we worked on together and that I taught her, was able to heal herself very rapidly. So, just to get the background, Holly, do you, how frequently would you say you get migraine headaches? Are they very frequent, very infrequent, or?
Well, depending on the stressors that are going on in my life, they used to be much more frequent. Lately, it's been maybe every other month or so, but not too bad.
Okay, and so in the past, and just to again set the background, Holly's done a tremendous amount of, we've worked together. Holly's, remember, not only is she a client of mine, but she's a good hypnosis practitioner herself. She's very knowledgeable, she's very enthusiastic, she studies hard, she knows a lot about this process, and she's basically a good student, a good practitioner. So again, when we're talking about Holly, I want to make it clear that we're talking about somebody who I would describe as an advanced practitioner. So just on that background. So in the past, Holly, let's go back before you knew anything about hypnosis at all, a few years back, let's say. Did you suffer from migraines then?
Yes, they were pretty intense, much more frequent. I would say maybe half the days out of a month.
Oh, wow. So about 50% of the time there's a migraine headache there.
Yeah, and some degree of
And just as a general point, once you, and we didn't work, remember, those of you that might remember, that's not what we worked on primarily in hypnosis. One of the interesting phenomena of hypnosis, particularly the nature of the work that I do with people, healing hypnosis by regression to cause, is that we can frequently work on one thing and another thing will clear up. So
right.
when we started to work on hypnosis, did the frequency of those work together? Did the frequency of those migraine headaches increase, decrease, or stay the same?
Decreased drastically, and the intensity of them was much less.
Right. So a kind of a side benefit of what we did.
Mm-hmm.
But despite that, sometimes they still occur, and as far as you're aware, they seem to be linked to levels of stress, for you at least.
Yes.
Okay. And I just want to make a comment on that. You know, for those of you who have never had a migraine headache, you might wonder, well, why do people complain so much about these things? They seem to be making a big fuss. Well, it's just a headache. Well, I can tell you, I'm lucky. I've very rarely had a migraine headache, or what I think is a migraine headache. But when it's occurred, it's absolutely horrible. The level of intensity varies with individuals, but people can feel nauseous, dizzy, almost faint, almost unable to operate at all. My niece in the United Kingdom, she had, well, they didn't know what it was. All they knew was that she had incredibly severe head pains that made her dizzy, almost to the point of fainting. They had no idea what it was. And they were so concerned that they thought she had some serious brain malfunction or brain injury or brain illness. And they put her on all sorts of monitors and tubes and everything. And after literally weeks of study, the conclusion that the doctors came to was simply that she suffered from very severe migraine headaches. So they were so severe that they thought there was something else wrong. So it's not just a little old headache. It's really unpleasant for the people that suffer from them. And from the people that suffer from them frequently, completely debilitating or certainly affecting their performance in all aspects when they're there. So just to set the background. Now, Holly mentioned that her migraine headache, she sees a link between that and stress, and many people do, but others don't. Others can't seem to see or identify the cause as to why migraine headaches come on. A lot of people following the conventional medical line very often associate it with food. Sometimes I've heard people say that if they eat strong cheese or chocolate or certain other things, they will cause a migraine headache. And again, I'm somewhat skeptical about that link, but it doesn't matter. The point is that people suffer these things, and what we're trying to do is alleviate their suffering to the degree that our tools, our hypnotic tools, can do that. Now, so tell me tell me about the last migraine headache, and obviously specifically the one connected with what we're speaking about today, Holly.
Sure. It started on a Monday, and it got progressively worse as the week went along.
Oh, so it
Friday.
continued through a number of days?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Week.
Did you get any? So if you went to bed at night and when you woke up in the morning, it was still there, or it was better, worse, or the same?
Yeah, it would usually, like on Monday, I took 1/3 of a migraine pill.
And what would you take conventionally for migraine?
Excedrin migraine.
Excedrin, okay. Migraine.
Just a piece of one, not a whole one.
Right.
And
why don't you take a whole one, by the way? I'm just for the edification of our viewers.
Why won't I take a whole one?
Yes.
Oh, because it'll upset my stomach.
Okay. So you get a gastric problem if you take too much.
Yeah.
And just stopping you there for a second, this is another problem that migraine sufferers, very often the things that they have to take in an attempt to relieve it cause other issues. So they're balancing, do I want to have an upset stomach? Do I want to have this migraine? What do I need to do? How do I need to get the balance? Very difficult. But go on. So
Yeah, and I took care of it for Monday, but Tuesday when I woke up, it was back, and I took another third of one pill.
Right.
And so on through the week. But by the end of the week on Friday, it no longer had any effect taking the pills.
Right, and so this is again, from our perspective, from the model that we talk about, what Holly's experiencing is a fairly common thing, because basically, from the hypnotic perspective, the subconscious mind is sending a pain signal, and the pain signal says there's a problem. Now, it's hard to identify what the cause of the problem is, which we're going to talk about in a second, but what most of us do is what the medication is attempting to do is alleviate the symptoms. And the ways in which that medication works and how is somewhat mysterious, actually. We're not even certain exactly how it works, but we do know that for some people at certain times it does work. But what Holly's describing is something that follows a conventional pattern from our model, which is that if you ignore the signal that's coming from the subconscious mind, and she's not ignoring it, she's attempting to deal with it by medication, push it down, suppress it. But there is a problem. What's the subconscious mind going to do? It's going to increase the power of that signal, make it worse, because it's saying, hey, shaking you, wake up, there's a problem here, deal with it, right? And you're going, no, let me just push that down, right? And in the end, the medication either doesn't work or partially works, and this is again a common experience. And I know that if you talk to the medicos, they're going to give you various physiological, chemical reasons as to why some medication works or why it doesn't, or in biological individuality, and I'm not really disputing that, because they're looking at it from that chemical model. I'm saying something different. We're looking at it from a mind model, and to see if there's anything that we can do to be effective, because, as you'll remember the basic point, the subconscious mind controls the body, the physiology of the body, controls even the brain. It controls it. That's our model. The subconscious mind is this intelligence that's controlling what's going on. So the idea that the realm that we work in is merely emotional and there's no link to the body is a fallacy. We are all a mind-body organism. So, on that, so what happened next, Holly? Did you call me? I think you did, right?
No, actually, I got a book in the mail that reminded me what you just said, that emotions are linked to physical pain. So I tried the self-hypnosis for climbing into feelings.
Great. So what Holly did is she began to use a tool which we've worked on together. Now, most of my clients, and we're going to talk about this, who do some of the longer programs, are going to be taught self-hypnosis. And there's many uses for self-hypnosis, as I've described on other programs, and you can watch on my YouTube channel if you see it. But we are talking about a specific use to climb in, what we call climbing into a feeling, which sounds very strange at first, particularly if you haven't experienced this process. Well, how do you climb into a feeling? What does that even mean? But in a hypnotic state, as a result of the training in this process, the subconscious mind knows what that means. And what it means is that what Holly is doing is bringing herself into a hypnotic state and then sending her attention and her mind towards the feeling. Now, this sounds very odd for people that have never experienced this and don't understand, because what do we normally do with feelings, particularly unpleasant feelings? We either try to suppress them, we suppress the symptoms of them through a medication perhaps, like was it Excedrin, did you say?
Yeah.
Right? Excedrin migraine, or we try to ignore them, or we try to distract ourselves from the feelings, or we try to say that the feelings are not important, or we've got all sorts of mechanisms. But what I'm asking people to do, what I teach people how to do using this process, is the opposite: move in towards the feeling. Now you might be saying, why on earth would we want to do that? Why would we want to move towards something that's unpleasant? It doesn't seem to make any sense. Well, think of the feeling as a messenger and a message from your subconscious mind. Think of it that way. Now imagine that you had a messenger comes to your door. You're in the house and that messenger's got an important message for you. They knock on the door. You don't respond because you're busy attending to something else, or maybe you're not even aware they're there. What's a good messenger going to do if they've got an important message? They're going to knock again. They're going to knock louder, right? And if it's a really important message, they might get a second messenger and a third messenger, right? To create a lot of noise. And the noise equivalent in your subconscious mind is the feelings, emotions and sensations. And in this instance, it ups it. So now the medication doesn't work. So Holly says, okay, let me see if we can use this tool. Then what happened, Holly? Describe the process that you used.
I went into self-hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
I climbed into the feelings. I started to have a very violent release.
Describe to people what that means, because that will sound
A lot of shaking, kind of like a fish flopping out of water.
Okay, so now this might seem to people strange or alarming. What's happening? What's going on? Well, one of the things that we've discovered through this process is that when feelings, emotions, sensations become trapped in the body, and I mean this very, very physically. I don't mean it in a, oh, my emotions are trapped somewhere in my soul or in my heart. I don't really mean it like that. I mean they're literally trapped in your body. I think of the body and mind as an organism working in harmony, and the body reflects the subconscious mind, the nervous system, the musculature. So it literally clamps down and tenses up, and the experience may come out in many ways, but in this instance as a migraine. So how does the body release it? There are various ways, but one of the ways the mind and body organism release it is by shaking. Now for people that have never seen this, it looks strange. Myoclonic shaking it's called. Now sometimes the shaking can be minor, sometimes it can be quite severe. In the old days, people thought that people were having seizures or even epileptic fits or something like that. But we subsequently learned that this isn't what's happening at all. What's happening is a process that I've described before, which is the process whereby the body is releasing energies in the form of tensions that have been compressed in there. And how do you know what they are? Well, you move towards the feeling, the message that the body's sending you. So you found your body moving quite violently?
Yes.
And again, for those of you that haven't experienced this will probably sound strange, odd, bizarre, or maybe even dangerous, but it isn't in any of those things. You're not unconscious in any of these, right, Holly? You're aware
Right.
that your body's in movement.
Yeah.
And would I right in thinking it feels almost as if somebody else is making the movements in your body? It's not.
Right. I don't feel like there's much control over it.
Right. So
Already.
understand the degree. What we do in this process, and what Holly did, is we hand over the control, as it were, to the subconscious mind. Why? Because the subconscious mind is really controlling all of these things anyway, right? And of course, that doesn't mean Holly's, becomes catatonic, but there could be a lot of movement. And in this instance, she describes quite a lot of movement. Sometimes a movement so severe that my old mentor used to describe it like a fish that was landed flopping around on the deck of a boat. Does that sound somewhat familiar, Holly?
Yes, that's what it was like. Yep.
Then what happened?
Then I asked to go to the point of entry, which means what caused this.
Right. So having found this feeling, and actually the feeling becomes stronger, Holly has been, taught to give herself a suggestion in hypnosis, which gives an instruction to the subconscious mind that simply says, go to where this all started, right? Because one of our fundamental ideas is that things happen for a reason. They don't just happen out of nowhere. They happen for a reason. We say that this response is the compounding of something that started much, much earlier. And when you did that, if you want to share it, in as much detail as you feel comfortable with, because these are all private and personal things. By the way, Holly's been very, very kind in sharing this experience with us in a public forum. When you work with me or Holly or one of my colleagues in this type of work, of course we don't reveal anything that people don't want us to reveal, because these are quite personal and private. But to the extent that you wish to talk about it, Holly, what happened next?
Sure. I got a really loud voice in my head that said, I will not be ignored, and then I got a series of scenes from the past weeks that started on that Sunday, actually. There were 6 or 7 that just flashed through my mind very rapidly.
Right, and this is another. Now again, I want to really emphasise, Holly is what I would call an advanced practitioner, by which I mean she understands this process, she's done it before, she's familiar with what can happen. And one of the things that can happen is there's almost like a cascade of events that come in very rapidly, because the subconscious mind is like a spider's web working, the strands of the webs and the intersection points of those strands are the junctions. It says, oh, this is like that, that's like that. And in this form, she hears a voice very strongly, I will not be ignored, right? Now, that thought comes into mind, and that thought is linked in this way. We have a perception. So her perception is, I'm being ignored. The being ignored causes an emotion, which you may or may not notice at the time. And the emotion causes the thought, which says, I'm being ignored. And now, even stronger, I won't be ignored. I refuse to be ignored. Then what? This is typical of the type of thing that happens. A very, very sort of rapid, very insightful self-therapy. So there's an insight. Then what happens, Holly? It's very interesting.
Well, after the scenes flashed through my mind, I eventually stopped shaking. It was about maybe 5 minutes total. Mm-hmm. And then when it was all done, the migraine was gone.
Completely gone?
Yes.
Now, we'll talk about that in a second. Did it return in the next few hours, days? I don't know.
Nope.
No.
It's gone.
Now, let's just take a view of this, because what Holly has said is, in my opinion, very, very significant. This migraine was not responding to medication. She used a simple but very powerful process. She moved into feelings, emotions and sensations. Her body started to cavitate, move, shake, in this instance quite violently. There was an immediate insight. And the body shaking subsided, right, Holly, in about 5 minutes.
5 minutes, yep.
This process took, folks, 5 minutes, right? And it's gone. Now, I want to say that this is an example not of how smart I am or how smart Holly is, or even about hypnosis in a way. This is about the power of your subconscious mind to heal you. Very, very, very powerful. Everything that we do, everything that I describe in this show, is to encourage people to use the power, where they have the knowledge, the training and the insight, of the subconscious mind to heal what the subconscious mind is capable of healing. So, in this instance, 5 minutes of this intensive work, and it was intensive, produces this result. What did you feel about it at the end, Holly? How did you feel immediately afterwards?
I was actually very surprised by the violent reaction that I had and everything, the voice and the scenes that popped up. But I was pleased with the results.
Right, and by the way, I'm very glad that you said that, Holly, because remember, a lot of people think of hypnosis as just being about relaxing. Everybody's relaxed all the time. And the conventional notion might have been, oh, well, you know, we used hypnosis to bring about a higher level of relaxation, and the relaxation results in the end of the migraine headache. In other words, the notion is if we can just relax everybody enough, everything goes away, or at least migraine headaches might. Was this relaxing when you were doing it?
No.
Right. In fact, would it be fair to say that it wasn't relaxing in the least whilst you were doing the actual shaking, right?
No, it was a little bit scary too.
Yeah. Right, so the releasing processes, what we do, and believe me, this sort of thing only happens, or most only happens, when someone's deep in hypnosis. It's not relaxing at all. It might be described somehow as cathartic, a release through kind of, you know, almost suffering, although it's not necessarily. Was it painful?
No.
Okay, so it's not painful. But this is, again, one of the biggest misconceptions about the work that I do and the work that we do, is that everybody's going to be relaxed all the time. I cannot tell you how many times people come into the office, and I'm sure this has happened when people talk to Holly as well, and I ask them, well, what do you know about hypnosis? Oh, I don't know anything about hypnosis. But even though people don't know anything, of course, like everything else, they'll have ideas about it. And one of the ideas, and they probably don't view it as entirely trivial, otherwise they wouldn't be in my office. They think it has some benefit. One idea is that they're going to be, as one hypnosis practitioner put it, knocked out, or perhaps under control of me, or so relaxed, right? The ultimate, and that's going to fix everything. And it's not that relaxation doesn't have a place, and it's not that sometimes that we don't experience relaxation in hypnosis, we do. But hypnosis is not relaxation. As you've heard me say many times on the show, my definition of hypnosis, following the definition given by the great hypnotist Dave Ellman, is the bypass of the critical faculty and the omission of acceptable selective thinking. The bypass of the critical faculty is the wedge into hypnosis, and the acceptable selective thinking is the hypnosis itself. Now, what happened here? Holly brought herself into a hypnotic state. She found the feelings, emotions and sensations, and she then gave herself a very powerful suggestion. Take me to the cause of this. Take me to where this begins, where this starts. And the subconscious mind said, okay, I can do that. And actually, the strange thing is what brings her there is the conscious mind. Because the conscious mind in this instance is like a filing clerk in a room with millions of filing cabinets, but it's an incredible filing clerk, the most brilliant and powerful you'll ever see. And it goes, oh yeah, I can bring you all the things connected with that. And it comes out in the thought. What was that thought again, Holly?
I will not be ignored.
Yeah, I will not be ignored, right? Now, what would conventional talk therapy do? Even if you were able to identify what Holly identified there, conventional talk therapy would start to go off into this whole complex view. Why do I feel I'm being ignored? How am I being ignored? Where am I being ignored? Who's ignoring me? When was I ignored when I was small? Am I ignored now? You know, this very, very complex, which is absolutely fascinating for the conscious mind. And I'm sure we'll have people, you know, involved in session after session after session after session to get insight into all that this means in their life and the ramifications. But the point is, you've still got a migraine headache, right? And they say, come back next week. And this is an example of where we can develop, from the emotional release, this rapid insight, which affects an immediate change. And that's an example of how hypnosis can be, when the conditions are right, and the practitioner and the person is skilled and trained, as Holly has been, for the right thing, at the right time, more effective than medication, and I would argue strongly, in this instance and for this purpose, far, far more effective than any form of talk therapy. In other words, this is in the wheelhouse of hypnosis. This is the sort of thing that we do, and not just hypnosis. Because the conventional hypnosis would have been like this. It would have brought Holly into a hypnotic state and said to her, send to your mind words like this. This is all melting away. This is soothing. I release this pain or this tension. That would be conventional hypnosis, right? And what's Holly doing there? She's doing the exact opposite, right? She's going right into the source of it, right into the beginning of it, because that form of direct suggestion hypnosis is actually just another subtle form of dealing with the symptoms. That's why when we talk with people in the hypnosis that we do, we often don't talk about I'll show you how to manage your migraine headache. Because I'm going to ask you, Holly, it's a loaded question really. Do you want to manage your migraine headaches, or do you want to get rid of them?
Get rid of them.
Right. And that's what most of us want. Holly would like to be in a situation, and perhaps she's, where she never suffers from a migraine headache again. That's what we all want. And if we do, and it comes up, we can deal with it as rapidly as possible without medication, safely, easily, quickly and comfortably. So did you have any, I really want to thank you for sharing that, because what you gave is a perfect example of the power of this work in action. And I want to say that what Holly did, you see, is a result of learning, training, understanding and experience. Now, Holly's put in a great deal of work because Holly's learning and discovering a lot about hypnosis in all its aspects. But what she did was something that you, anybody out there, can learn to do in a very, very short period of time. It doesn't take weeks, months, years of training. You just have to know how to flip on or turn on a switch that turns on a skill that you have. We just have to wake it up. Did you want to say anything else about that, Holly? Or anything that I've forgotten? Or is there anything else that you think I should know or the listeners, viewers should know?
Only that I had tried the techniques you mentioned before, the suggestions for, the pain draining away, and I had found those were not effective on my migraine. So definitely the climbing into the feelings is the way to get rid of it.
Now this is a thank you for bringing that up, because that's very important. Because people that listen to this, particularly other hypnosis practitioners, will think that what I'm doing is just knocking the value of more conventional hypnotic technique. They will come and argue, well, I've had tens of clients, hundreds of clients who've given suggestions to themselves that say, well, this will, create, for example, one of the techniques is they create a colour or an image or a symbol for the, let's say, it's like a balloon full of water, and as the water drains out, the pain and the discomfort of the headache or other thing just diminishes, goes away. Or there's all sorts of symbols that are created, and these sound marvellous. And I'm not going to say these never work. They do work for some people. But, and this is the essential point here, when the subconscious mind is bringing you a message and it manifests in the form of a strong feeling, emotion or sensation, it doesn't matter what direct suggestion or what form, however clever, however artful it is, the subconscious mind is going to reject it. It won't accept it. Because remember, that definition of hypnosis is the acceptability of selective thinking. Why? Because it's telling Holly, hey, there's something important here to deal with, right? And I'm not just going to go away just because you want me to. Because that's the equivalent of saying to that messenger and that message, well, you just sit over there, old chap, for a time. You just sit over there, and when I've got time, I'll deal with you, because what you have to say is not really that important. I'm just going to relax, and I'll just relax. Whatever your message is, I'm not really interested in it. I'm just going to relax about it. And we're saying the opposite. We're saying, okay, what's the problem here? We got the messenger. What's going on? Why are you here to see me? And the messenger, in this instance, the discomfort, the pain of the migraine is saying, I've got something important to tell you. And the message comes out, something along the line is, first of all, you have to get rid of that. When I say get rid of, you have to release that strong emotion, because when the emotion's strong, you don't get the message. Then the message comes in, very clear in Holly's case, I will not be ignored. In other words, the feeling of being ignored, whether she's conscious of that or not, manifests as a series of tensions building up in the system, linked to that concept that she feels her perception is she's being ignored. Now, I don't know whether she was being ignored or not being ignored. Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the perception of her subconscious mind is that, hey, I'm being ignored, and I don't want this, and I don't like this, and I don't like it, but I'm going to squash it down. And just talking about that for a second, if I may, with you, Holly, in those sessions where those different scenes that flashed into the mind, where you were being ignored, at those times, two questions. Number one, were you aware of being ignored? And if you were, did you do anything about it?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. I was not aware, per se, that I was being ignored. I remember feeling in each of the scenes when it was happening, just mild irritation. But I mean, one of them I'll say that one of the scenes that came up, I was talking to my husband. When I turned around to look at him, I noticed he was asleep, so of course he didn't hear me. And that's not really an example of being ignored. He was just asleep, but that's one of the scenes that had popped up.
That's a marvelous example, because what it's telling us here, if I may just interpret that for a second, is that it's telling us that it's how it's perceived. He may have fallen asleep because he's tired. He may not be deliberately ignoring you. Who knows? But it doesn't matter. If it's linked and the perception says, man, look, there it goes, I'm being ignored again, right? and the strong, what the perceptive emotion is that, oh, I feel kind of slightly irritated or perhaps disappointed or a little bit frustrated. But underneath, there's this combination of perhaps frustration, anger, and it says, I will not be ignored, right? That's what's underneath. And that, folks, is subconscious. It is beneath the level of consciousness. She's a very skilled in self-hypnosis. She's not aware of it. She just, kind of it feels irritating, as we aren't. And what's happening underneath? It's like a pressure cooker, building up, building up, building up. Now, it looks as if I'm saying, and she's saying, well, if we just release the pressure of that, well, it all goes away. Well, yes, that's true. But the point I really want to make here is that we're not just releasing it through relaxation. We're releasing it by going to its cause, right? We're going right to the cause of it. And the beautiful thing about this process is that we don't have to figure it out. Why? Because the emotion produced by the subconscious mind, manifest in the body, in this instance as the pain of a migraine, is all we have to go towards. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful intelligence. It lays out a path for us, right in front of us. Think how by comparison, how crude and how imprecise conventional talk therapy techniques are. Where did this emotion come from? How did it come about? What were the circumstances, if we can even remember? Very, very roundabout. Here, we've got a direct target to the very source of the problem. How? The power of your subconscious mind and understanding how to use it, right? So, how did I get into all of that, Holly? I got off onto a tangent there, but
you were wondering if I was aware of where that came from.
Yes,
and I
thank you.
wasn't.
Thank you for keeping me on track. But so would it be fair to say that you were somewhat aware, but you weren't aware of the strength of it, the force of it, as it were? Is that
right?
fair?
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Well, yeah, because some of the things that popped up earlier in the week, I actually tried to do a release on them earlier, but that one was ineffective, but I had attached like the wrong emotion to them, I believe.
Tell us about that, because this is very, very helpful. I'm hoping that some of the people out there who are watching this, who either suffer from migraines or friends, will, as a result of this, perhaps contact me or somebody doing similar work. And so let's talk about that. That's very, very important. Say a bit more about that, Holly, please, if you would.
Yeah, I was aware that some of the things that happened on Sunday and Monday made me upset.
Okay.
And I tried to release the emotion, but it was very weak, like hardly any shaking, and I couldn't really like climb into it at that point.
Right, you didn't feel you got to the essence of it.
Right, exactly.
So can you identify, and I'm putting Holly on the spot here because we haven't talked about this, like all of these things, we just do it spontaneously. I want to remind these folks, everybody listening, watching, this is a live show, it's unedited. We haven't pre-planned, the only thing we've planned is that we're going to talk about this. So I've got no idea what Holly's going to say. She's described it to me before, but so what happened in some of those other ones, Holly? Did you attempt to climb into the feeling, or what occurred?
I did try to attempt to climb into the feeling, but I think the issue is I tried to label the feeling before climbing into it.
Oh, okay, that's a marvelously subtle point. Wow, that's such a powerful and subtle point. I just want to explain this to people. One of the things that we try and do naturally is we try and figure out problems with our conscious mind. So our conscious mind has a series of labels for things, and of course, like that's how we communicate. We talk in a label. We give a perception, feeling, an emotion, a name, so that we can think that we both know what we're talking about. Let's take a very big and complex one, love. Now, it's one of the words that I avoid using early on with my clients. I mean, talking about it. Because what does that mean to the client? I don't know. It can mean so many different things. And until we find out what it means, we have to be careful. So we give labels to things, and therefore we look for a label. Now, I would say that the truth of the matter is much more subtle than that. The subconscious mind is incredibly subtle. So when you have something like, let's take an obvious one, like anger. We talk about anger, but there are so many, many, many different forms of anger and shades of it. How that presents itself to the subconscious mind. It can be frustration, it can be mild irritation, it can be bone-shaking anger, it can be something that's so strong it almost makes you tremble with rage. There's so many different forms of it. And even the richness of our English language limits the degree to which we can express the subtleties of these emotions. And so, rather than attempting to do that, I say something to the clients which seems to be very facile in its instruction initially, which is, don't worry about it, climb into that feeling. You don't have to come up with an exact label for it. Something may pop into your mind, but it doesn't matter. All that it matters is you feel this and you climb into the feeling. So can you describe that a little bit, what the difference was? Because this is a very good and powerful point. If you can.
The difference was when I went to do the release, the shaking, there was very hardly anything, and I didn't get any relief from my migraine either.
So there was no
or
big
the feeling
movement.
for that matter.
Right. And you felt that was because you put a label. What were some of the labels, just for the edification of me and our viewers and listeners? What were some of the labels that you put on that?
Jealousy.
Right. So for example, you sort of came to an idea as what it might be, and then you looked to go into that, right? Mm-hmm. And again, this is very, very, very common. This is the way, some talk therapy works. You try and you talk about it and say, well, I think what I'm really feeling is a form of jealousy, and so I'm going to climb into that. And the subconscious mind, if you're even taught anything like that, or I'm trying to deal with that, by putting non-jealous thoughts in, by saying the positive things. And the subconscious mind's messenger says, I'm not here to talk about that. What's that got to do with anything? I'm not here to talk about that. You're not listening to me. And you say, no, I know what you're here about. You're here about jealousy, right? And the subconscious mind is going, no. And you go, oh yeah, you are. And you go, oh, you think I am? Let me just increase the pain a bit. There you go. That'll wake you up, right? And it ups it. It increases it. It's like, no, you're not listening to me. Now, of course, this is a subtle thing that's going on. So, what was the difference, if you can identify the difference, between a non-effective process for you, Holly, and what was later on effective? And just before you answer that, we're judging effectiveness by measurability of the change in the status. In other words, migraine, no migraine. What was the difference that you thought, in your estimation, in how you approached it?
Oh, so the first time I went in trying to solve jealousy, and the second time I didn't label it. I just went into the pain, really. Right.
And so there's, again, this brings another. It sounds simple, but actually, if I may say so, it's a deeply profound and subtle point. See, the body and mind as a cohesive organism manifests emotion as sensation. In this instance, the blinding, uncomfortable, debilitating pain of migraine. Make no mistake, I mean, pain, as we've talked about before, is actually a protective mechanism. Without pain, we wouldn't know that we'd hurt ourselves or that something needs to be addressed. Now that's an easy thing if I cut my finger or burn my hand or something, because it's like, oh, stop doing that and address the problem, right? But here, we're talking about a form of pain which is more subtle, but it's manifesting in a not very subtle way in the form of a horrible migraine headache. And notice that this migraine headache, Holly gives a very good description. And it's not like this for everybody. Sometimes for some people, migraine headaches just come out of the blue. They don't really, but that's how they appear to be. But Holly could see this one becoming progressively worse during the course of a few days, and she'd attempted to deal with it in the best way that she could. And then at the end, she goes, oh my goodness, and nothing's working, I got to do something else. And she makes an attempt, and that doesn't seem quite to work. And then she goes towards, would it be fair to say that you went towards the very sensation of the pain itself, Holly?
Yes.
Yeah. See, that's the key. Now, what does it take to do this in the way that Holly did it? It takes two things which Holly has, apart from the skill and the training, which we're going to assume. It takes intelligence, because the intelligence is recognizing that there's even a problem. You know, you have to have some intelligence. And that's not a problem, because all of my clients are intelligent. And I mean that sincerely, because why? Because normally they're people that have considered and thought about the problems that they're attempting to deal with, and they've been looking for solutions, usually haven't found them. So what I mean by intelligent is they're people reflective, trying to figure out how to deal with whatever problems that they're dealing with. So that's not the important thing. But there's a second thing that's really important that I've spoken about before: courage. It takes courage to move into something that is uncomfortable, even if you know that that can bring it to an end. Most people, when they experience something uncomfortable, are going, oh, no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. No, I'm not going to go there at all. No, keep it away from me, right? Why would I want to do that? But Holly has to have a kind of a faith. And the faith is the belief, based upon her experience and understanding, that moving right into the core of something is somehow going to resolve it. Because again, it sounds at first counterintuitive until you understand how it's working, until you experience it working. So when you first started to go into that emotion, did it get, and that sensation of pain, did it at first get stronger, or did it immediately get weaker, or what happened?
I was very intense at first.
Right. So another thing, folks, is that I remember of a famous quote by Winston Churchill, who said, and I can't do my Churchillian voice, but it was along the line, if you're going through hell, keep going, right? And his point is that there's a beginning and an end to this thing. So if you're going through hell, keep moving. Don't get stuck there, right? Now, when you're in the bowels of hell, trying to find a way out, in other words, within the very core and the essence of this horrible, debilitating discomfort which we label a migraine, this pain, it isn't pleasant. So, when I'm suggesting and instructing and teaching people how to do this, initially, they may find as they move towards it, oh my goodness, this is even worse, this is terrible, why would I do this? And so you have to have courage and faith, right? How long did that intensity last, would you say, Holly, roughly, as far as you can judge?
Oh, not long, maybe 30 seconds.
Right. There you go. You see? Now, there's a statement that I make in the work that we do. It sounds very, very trite and a little bit new agey, and I apologise to the new agey people if I'm being discourteous to you. But you'll hear me say this in sessions, and probably Holly's sick of hearing me say it, which is that which you feel, you can heal. Only the feelings you resist persist. Which sounds very trite, doesn't it? All poetic and very nice rhyming couplets there. But actually, it's quite accurate. You see, Holly was willing to pay the entry price for healing. And the entry price is feeling the feeling. That doesn't sound like very much fun at first. And it isn't for a short while, right? To feel the feeling. Because if you can feel it, you can heal it. But if you're ignoring it, suppressing it, pushing down the symptoms, trying to change it, trying to pretend it's not there, trying to distract yourself from it by doing something else, you're not paying the entry price. So you actually felt what that was really like. Is that an accurate statement, Holly? Don't let me put words in your mouth. You tell me if I'm wrong.
Nope, that's right.
Yeah. So she felt it, and then it intensified. And it intensified to such a degree. Just remind us, Holly, what did your body do again?
Oh, it shook violently.
And when you say shook violently, was it just your hand going like this? Was it, your head? What actually?
Oh no, it was my whole body, just like you said, a fish out of water.
Yeah. So the whole body's in motion, right, for a period of
Yep.
time. So again, this is because the subconscious mind is present across the whole body. It's not just located. We think of a migraine as being, somewhere maybe up here or back here, or maybe that's it, right? Actually, the force of all of that is being held across the whole body, and so the subconscious mind has said, you want to deal with this? You got to release the whole body. It's all got to be in motion. And again, I want to really emphasize this demands courage, because when you're there doing this and your body's all going in motion, there's a little part of your mind that may be saying thoughts like, "What, Holly?" If you willing to.
I thought I was going to injure myself. That's how violent it was. It was my most violent one ever.
Right. So you think. By the way, folks, I don't recommend you do this on a straight back chair. I'm hoping that Holly did this either on a bed or on a recliner or something like that. Can I ask where you were when you did this?
I was on the futon.
On a futon, yeah. So in other words, because your body will experience movement, very likely, and one of the things that we say is we want to give our bodies the permission to move in whatever way they need to move. And obviously, your body's not going to move in such a way that it's going to injure itself. In other words, if you're sitting on a straight back armless chair and you start to go into motion, you're not going to fall on the floor and hit your head. Your body's just going to stop. But what that's going to do is that's going to inhibit the process of release. So we say, and I coach my clients, so that when the body's in motion, let it move. Because the essence of what was going on here is motion. Some people have said emotions are energy in motion. We are looking, again, for things to flow, and specifically for these feelings to flow out. And again, let's use that analogy of the messenger and the message. Think of it as a flow process. The messenger comes along, stops there. That's the messenger stuck, not being heard, right? That's the stuck, trapped emotion. But then the messenger delivers the message. When the message is delivered, the messenger doesn't have to stay around anymore. Just walks off and's out the picture, gone. Message taken, message understood. And the message is a really clear one. I will not be ignored, right? There's the message that I will not be ignored. Okay, I've said my piece. I've gone. And that's it, right? And they go, okay. I hear what you say, and they go, okay, then I don't have to produce this strong emotion feeling in you anymore. But that message, I won't be ignored, has been trapped in the body, and the body starts to move it out, right? How does the body know, or the mind know what to do? Well, the profound answer is, I don't know. But your subconscious mind knows, right? It knows how to do it. And so it went through this process, and you were experienced enough and wise enough just to let it continue, right, Holly?
Yes.
Yeah. Because one of the things that Holly knows, and one of the things that we talk about, is all feelings, emotions and sensations, however powerful they may appear, are in their nature finite. They have a beginning and they have an end. It doesn't mean that you won't get more emotions later on, but people conventionally think of emotions like a huge lake or a flowing river or the huge ocean, endless. So if you experience something that's very unpleasant, that's endless, what would you naturally want to do? Avoid that thing entirely or suppress the perception of it. But if you know, as Holly knew through training, experience and understanding, that whatever you're experiencing, however intense, had a beginning, which she looks to go to, and therefore you can bring it to an end, you're willing to go on the journey. Who would willingly go on a journey if they thought the journey never had any end point? They were just going to be going forever and ever and ever, particularly if you were, as to go back to our Churchillian quote, if you were going through hell, but you'd never reach the end of that journey, who would even want to visit? Hopefully nobody. But if you knew that hell had a beginning, hell had an end, you could go from the beginning and finish up at the end and get out of it entirely. You'd want to get through it as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible. And Holly knew from experience and training that the key to that, and what gave her the courage, is the insight and the wisdom to climb into that feeling directly. That sense in the form of the sensation, let the body do what it needs to do under the direction of the subconscious mind, and then it goes, right? Immediately changeable and perceptive change. Anything else you think we should know about that, Holly?
Nope.
So I want to thank Holly a great deal because that was a great example of how this process can bring about very, very rapid healing from what for many people is an almost intractable problem. It's just one example of hypnosis in practice, how powerful and rapidly hypnosis is. And again, it's a very, very specific form. We're not just talking about being brought into a hypnotic state and being given a few suggestions either by me or by oneself. We're talking about a very specific process which has steps, which has markers, and the most important thing is that it's learnable. You can learn how to do this. Anybody can learn how to do this and how to make it effective for them. Now, the example that Holly gave is one of a migraine headache, and that's a good example for our purposes because it's something very measurable. The headache starts, the headache ends. On subsequent shows, I'm going to talk about how some other things are amenable to this process, some for longer processes, some for shorter processes, and the measurability that we put on them, and how hypnosis helps. So once again, thank you, Holly, for describing how hypnosis helped you. I know that hypnosis can help you, and many, many thousands, millions of people, once they learn it, try it, are coached in it and supported in it. Thanks very much for listening and watching. This is Neil Myers, hypnosis practitioner, saying thanks, and we'll see you the next time.